Today we're going to talk about how Portgas D, Ace should be handled in One Piece live-action Season 3, how Netflix should present this character within the Alabasta storyline, and which Ace scenes we are most likely to see. Because Ace is not an ordinary character. Even if he appears only briefly, he changes the atmosphere of the story, suddenly makes Luffy's world feel much bigger, and brings weight to the screen the moment he shows up. If you're also excitedly waiting for One Piece live-action Season 3, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because your support really matters if you want more One Piece content like this. Let's get started. I think Ace's greatest strength in Alabasta should come not from having long scenes, but from carrying weight even if his screen time is short. Because Ace is the kind of character who should change the atmosphere of a scene the moment he appears. Luffy's energy carries a more childish, more reckless, and more impulsive sense of freedom, but Ace has a more grounded, heavier, and more dangerous version of that same energy. That's why when Ace appears for the first time in Season 3, the audience shouldn't just feel excitement. The real feeling should be, this guy is coming from a completely different level. Even before he says more than a few lines, even before he fully shows his power, the balance of the scene should already shift with his arrival. And this is exactly where the best part of Ace's impact in Alabasta begins. Because this character is not there to overshadow Crocodile, but to make the war in Alabasta feel like part of a much larger world. So when Ace arrives, the center of the story should not change, but the horizon of the story should grow. The audience should feel this. While Luffy is fighting his own great battle here, Ace is already someone who has been moving through other battles, other threats, and other major names. His presence should not make Alabasta feel smaller. On the contrary, it should show that even the events of Alabasta are only one piece of the massive movement happening throughout the One Piece universe. And Ace's real impact already lies exactly there. There is also the emotional side of it, because seeing Ace in Season 3 won't just mean seeing a powerful pirate, it will also mean touching, for the first time, a very important piece of Luffy's family, past, and emotional world. This meeting doesn't need to be overly melodramatic, and honestly I don't think it should be at all, but it still has to feel meaningful. Because in Luffy's world, brotherhood is not a bond built through words. It is something felt more through behavior, looks, and attitude. When we see Ace and Luffy side by side, we also need to understand why these two characters are similar but not the same. And that is what could turn Ace's scenes from being just a fan-awaited reunion into a meeting that actually carries character depth. For me, the best way to use Ace in Season 3 would be this. Even without very long scenes, he should leave a mark. He should carry weight even when he seems warm, and no matter how sincere his bond with Luffy is, there should always be the shadow of another path behind him. Because that is exactly where Ace's magic lies. When he arrives, he doesn't just bring brotherhood with him. He also brings the past, strength, silence, and the scent of a much bigger story. If Netflix can strike that balance correctly, Ace can become one of the most talked about characters of Season 3, even without sitting at the center of Alabasta. And honestly, that is exactly what I most want to see. An Ace who stays in your memory even with just a few scenes. Calm but heavy, warm but dangerous. When it comes to Ace's scenes in Alabasta, I think the thing Netflix would need to be most careful about is how they build his first appearance. Because this meeting should not pass like some ordinary reunion. Even if it feels natural for Luffy, it will be a major moment for the audience. That's why Ace's first entrance into the frame doesn't need unnecessary spectacle. In fact, the more relaxed and natural his arrival feels, the stronger it will be. For example, him suddenly appearing in the desert or in a crowded town scene, with the people around him not seeing him like some ordinary pirate, while Luffy reacts as if this is the most natural thing in the world, could work really well. Because that contrast would make both Ace's weight and the brotherly bond land at the same time. After that first meeting, the crew dynamic also becomes very important. The first reactions of characters like Zoro, Sanji, Nami, and Usopp toward Ace could show us what kind of aura he carries. Because it is much more effective to make us feel that Ace is powerful through the way people react to him rather than only through visual effects. For example, while Luffy is completely comfortable around him, it would be very valuable if the others sensed something unusual about Ace. Someone who doesn't look threatening, but still makes everyone unconsciously pay closer attention. That would present Ace not like some exaggerated hero, but like someone who quietly changes the balance of every place he enters. And I think one of Ace's strongest sides in Season 3 could be exactly that. People adjusting themselves around him without even fully realizing it. Another important scene would of course be the moment we first truly feel Ace's power. But the point here should not be to create some giant explosion of effects. I think what Netflix should do is show Ace's fire not like a spectacle, but like an extension of his character. In other words, that power should look as natural as breathing for him. In a threatening moment or during some conflict, Ace using fire calmly and effortlessly would be much more effective. Because what makes Ace special is not only that he is strong, but that he uses that strength without panic, without exaggeration, and as if control has always been in his hands. In that scene, the audience shouldn't just say, "Wow, cool effect." They should say, "This guy is really on another level." I also think the desert scenes are incredibly important for Ace, because Alabasta already carries a story built on heat, drought, and the pressure of survival. So even just seeing a character so closely associated with fire walking through that setting has visual meaning on its own. Seeing him calm, relaxed, and as if he has already solved the rhythm of this world while everyone else is worn down, would give the character a completely different presence. Especially if his walk, his looks, and the pace of his speech are handled correctly, Ace's scenes could become unforgettable without even needing to be long. In fact, sometimes even a scene where he is simply walking in silence could create much more impact than long, badly written dialogue. That is part of where Ace's strength already lies. Sometimes he expands the story without even speaking. Small but effective moments that show his warmth with Luffy are essential. The two of them eating together, a short joke between them, the protective side in Ace's gaze toward Luffy, or even Ace's more controlled energy compared to Luffy's childish ease. If all of that is handled well, the audience won't just say, "So they're brothers." They'll actually feel that bond. But those scenes shouldn't be written too sweetly or too comedically, because Ace's warmth can be soft, but it should always carry weight underneath it. So if the Ace scenes we get in Season 3 are written not just as action or fire showcases, but also as moments that build character, bond, and world in a short amount of time, they could work incredibly well. I think the most critical part of all this lies in Ace's character tone, because if Netflix writes him only as a cool, charismatic, and powerful pirate, then he stays on the surface. If you want Ace's scenes to really work, you have to make it feel like there is more to him than what is visible. So he should be relaxed, but not careless. Warm, but not completely open. His love for Luffy should be clearly felt, but that love should not turn into a character who constantly talks about his feelings at length. Ace's impact already begins there. He is not someone who shouts his inner world out loud. What makes him interesting is that he hides certain emotions, and still manages to make the audience feel a great deal. And Luffy's brotherhood with him should be built through exactly that tone. There should absolutely be an enjoyable, natural, and warm energy between them, because this relationship cannot be written as completely cold. But I would still want there to be a faint shadow over that brotherhood, because Ace's love is not an easy, relaxed kind of love. It is a protective kind of love. When he looks at Luffy, he doesn't just see the little brother he loves, he also sees someone he does not want to see hurt. That is why Ace's conversations with Luffy can be very sweet, but they should always carry a feeling of attentiveness underneath. As if on one hand he feels relieved, but on the other hand he knows he still has to keep moving at any moment. If Netflix carries this duo only through comedy, the scenes will feel warm but not deep. What is really needed is to put weight inside that warmth. The other important point is Ace's Blackbeard thread, because his presence in Alabasta is not only about brotherhood. One of Ace's biggest functions in this season is to make the audience feel that he is chasing something else entirely. In other words, he is not just someone who came there to see Luffy. His real path is continuing somewhere else. And I think it would be much better if they conveyed that not through long explanations, but through a few short and effective lines. Ace mentioning a name, making it clear that he is looking for someone, or briefly hardening his expression at some point in the conversation would already be enough. Because what matters here is not dumping information, but opening the horizon. The audience should feel this. This man's story does not end here, and maybe it doesn't even really begin here. The Whitebeard side is also very important, because one of the things that makes Ace feel large is the scale of the world he belongs to. While Luffy is still a young pirate trying to carve out his own path within the Grand Line, Ace should feel like someone who is already part of much larger names and much heavier balances. They don't need to explain that at length. But while Ace is talking, moving, or even just standing still, the trace of a much bigger pirate order should be felt behind him. In other words, there should be not only individual strength in him, but also a sense of belonging. What makes Ace interesting is that he feels big even on his own, while still carrying the feeling that he comes from something even bigger. And that adds extra depth to his Alabasta scenes. Because then, Ace is not just a strong man, he becomes someone who comes from the heavier layers of the world. So I think the best way to write Ace in Season 3 would be this. Someone who doesn't talk too much, but still carries meaning even in silence. Someone who is warm with Luffy, but internally always alert. Strong, but not trying to prove that strength. And most importantly, someone who is only passing through here briefly, while his mind is already walking down another road. If Netflix can achieve that, Ace's scenes won't just be good, they will be unforgettable. Because then the audience will feel this. This man was only on screen for a few minutes, but it feels like an entire story exists behind him. And that is already exactly what makes Ace Ace. He arrives in the scene, he doesn't stay long, but even after he leaves, his effect continues to remain there. And that is exactly why Ace's greatest success in Season 3 should not be taking over the center of Alabasta, but expanding the world around Alabasta. because the main backbone of this season is Vivi, Crocodile, the Rebellion, the Kingdom Crisis, and the approaching explosion. Ace should not stand in front of those things, but every time he appears on screen, the audience should feel this. As big as the war in this desert is, there are even greater storms raging on the other side of the sea. That is where Ace's real function lies. He is not a character who scatters the story. He is a character who quietly expands its scale. If Netflix preserves that balance, Ace can feel extremely powerful without overshadowing Alabasta's emotional and political center. I also think Ace's departure scene will be at least as important as his arrival. In fact, if written correctly, it might even be more effective. Because the real power of a character like Ace lies not just in his appearance, but in the feeling he leaves behind growing after he is gone. That is why his farewell should not be too big, too tearful, or too long. Maybe just a few short lines, maybe one last look toward Luffy, or maybe a simple exit that naturally carries the feeling of, my path is somewhere else. If that simplicity is built correctly, it will work much better. Because in that moment, the audience will begin to think this. While Luffy goes toward his own battle here, what dark road is Ace about to chase now? And in that way, even after the character leaves the scene, his effect continues to live within the story. One of the things I would most want to see is this. Even in just a few scenes, Ace should feel like someone who will connect to major things in the future. In other words, he should not come across as just the character of that one episode. Some characters arrive, do their job, and leave. But Ace is not one of those. Even in a short amount of time, he should leave behind a shadow that stretches into the future. That is exactly where the Blackbeard thread comes in. If Netflix handles that side with the right subtlety, Ace's scenes won't just be instantly satisfying moments. They will also build a sense of curiosity in the audience that carries over into later seasons. And I think that is one of the things this live-action adaptation needs the most. The ability to tell today's story while also making you feel the weight of tomorrow. There will also have to be a very delicate balance on the acting side, because playing Ace is just as difficult as writing him. If he is played too hard, he loses his emotion. If he is played too soft, he loses his weight. If he is played too cool, he starts to feel artificial. That is why the most important point in Ace's Season 3 performance will be being able to deliver charisma without forcing it. His eyes should carry a past. He should be able to soften around Luffy. But even that, softening should never turn into complete ease. When the audience looks at Ace, they should feel both trust and the sense that there is something unresolved inside him. Because what makes the character unforgettable is not only his fire, but also that quiet conflict within him. If Netflix truly captures that tone, then Ace can be felt not just as a beloved character, but as one of the heaviest presences in the live-action universe. In short, the version of Ace that feels most right to me for Season 3 is this. An Ace who passes through Alabasta briefly, but changes the atmosphere of the season, who warms the heart with his bond with Luffy, but casts a shadow through the bigger story behind him, who makes his strength felt without shouting it, and who continues to leave a mark even after he is gone. Because in One Piece, some characters step into a scene and create a moment, but some characters step into a scene and make the world bigger. Ace belongs to the second group. If Netflix understands that correctly, then we won't just be talking about Ace as, we finally got to see him. We'll be talking about him as the character who changed the scale of the entire story with only a few scenes in Season 3. And honestly, the Ace I want is exactly that. Short but heavy, warm but wounded, calm but dangerous, and still impactful even after he leaves. What do you think about Portgas D Ace? Do you think Netflix should present Ace in Season 3 in a more mysterious and heavy tone? Or should they handle him in a warmer way that emphasizes the brotherhood side more? Which Alabasta scene of his are you most looking forward to seeing? Do you think Ace's arrival should be just a cool moment, or should it create a major impact that changes the atmosphere of the entire season? Definitely write your thoughts in the comments, and if you liked the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because your support really matters if you want more One Piece live-action videos like this. See you in the next video.